Hello, I'm Karen Seitz, and this is the Happy Wife School. This podcast is for married women to realize that we are responsible for our happiness, that no one and no thing can make us happy, and that our husbands are not the source of our unhappiness. In each episode, I red pill married women to know that we are the problem in our marriages to good men. For the good men, this podcast will wake you up to the realities of your wife's woman ways, to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to her emasculation in a constructive, caring way. Before we dive into today's episode, a couple reminders. My message is meant for common and usual marital issues. My podcast is not intended for abusive, violent, or compulsive behaviors in a marriage that are threatening or dangerous. Also, please take a second to visit my website and learn more about my courses, which offer solutions for married women and good men. You can find the link in the description below. With all that being said, let's get started. We are talking about today attachment style theory and why it is another flawed marriage counseling model. The reason that I want to talk about this is I hear from a lot of good men who reach out, write in, comment on my videos, talking about their different attachment style that they have found out that they are, and that leads to the issues and problems they have. I hear from women about their attachment style in the relationship and the reason they have the behaviors they have, and their husband's attachment style and why he has the problems that he has. First, let me talk about what attachment style theory is. A very basic definition. I'm not going to dive deep into the theory, but I do want to set it up, giving you a definition of what it is. So attachment style theory explains how early bonds with caregivers shape later relationship patterns. Attachment style theory explains how early bonds with caregivers shape later relationship patterns. It was originally developed by psychologist John Bowlby in the 1950s and later expanded by another psychologist named Mary Ainsworth. So attachment styles such as secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized significantly impact marriage and are addressed in marriage counseling to help couples understand their emotional reactions, improve communication, and build healthier connections. Therapists help partners identify their own styles and their partner's style, fostering emotional awareness and creating a safe environment where they can develop new strategies for managing conflict and strengthening their bond. If you have been to couples counseling recently or are in it, there's a good chance this is the model that you are working with. This was a model before I found a different path. This is a model that I wrapped myself and my husband into early on in our marriage. And actually, I think it was even before we got married. I think we were engaged that I dragged my husband to a couples counselor. And this was the model that he tried to help us with. The biggest flaw with attachment style theory and other models used by couples counselors is that couples counselors are not trained in any capacity to understand the dynamics between a good man and his wife. They are not trained to see and understand a woman's victim story, the stories we create as women making our husbands the problem, and elaborating and exaggerating the issues and telling them in such a way that paint us as innocent and all the things we've tried and how we're emotionally available, how we are emotionally adjusted, how we're willing to talk about our feelings, but our husbands are not. that they're distant, they're disconnected, they're emotionally unavailable. Oftentimes women will have the story of why our husbands are distant and emotionally unavailable because of their childhood. And we psychoanalyze our husbands and then draw a therapist into that. And a marriage counselor does not understand the dynamics of the emasculation, the gaslighting, the manipulation that we do to our husbands as women to break them down and disempower them so that we have the power and control in the relationship. It is simply not anything that counselors or marriage counselors are trained in their schooling. And they are biased toward a woman to believe a woman's story and are biased against a man to see him as the problem in the relationship. I always say there are some good ones out there that will hold women accountable. But as I often say, as soon as a good man and a woman go to a couples counselor where she is held accountable, she doesn't want to go back. And she wants to find a different counselor that will validate her story. This is why I tell good men not to go to marriage counseling. And attachment style theory is another reason that good men should not be into go to couples counseling. And that's what I'm going to get more into later in the video. We're going to cover 7 critical flaws of attachment style theory that good men need to know. Another reason men should not go to couples counseling and should not engage in a model like attachment style theory is because a good man has been gaslit in the marriage by his wife to believe that he's the problem. He is not able to see the emasculation. He's not able to see the gaslighting that is happening. He doesn't have those traits and negative patterns in him as a good man. It is not in a good man's nature to manipulate, to gaslight, to strip someone of their power and make them feel wrong and bad. It is simply not their nature. And they get duped and gaslit into believing that they are the problem. And as a good man in their nature, they're problem solvers. So when they're having the issues and challenges in the marriage, they want to solve the problem. And they falsely believe that couples counseling and the marriage therapist are going to be balanced and fair-minded. He also falsely believes that his wife is generally interested in solving the problems, that she wants to look at her side of the issues, wants to take accountability and work toward making things better. He can't see through the gaslighting and emasculation how she perceives him as the main problem in the marriage and that he has caused all the problems. So marriage counseling is a setup to make good men wrong and bad and allow your wives to further validate you as the problem. In general, women have no intentions of taking accountability or solving problems. And the purpose of couples counseling for a woman is to validate herself and how she views her husband as the problem. If you are given exercises or homework from a couples counselor, a wife will not follow through or uphold her end of the bargain. And she will be constantly watching if her husband is doing it correctly or not, and will always tell her husband he's not doing what they're being taught in couples counseling correctly, and gaslight him further to believe that she is doing it right. So attachment style theory is just another model that's very popular right now in couples counseling that good men get sucked into and that women want to use as a way to further validate that he's the problem and to also use her own unhealthy attachment styles to excuse, rationalize, and justify her own poor behavior in the relationship with no intentions of changing. So, what we want to get into today are 7 critical flaws of attachment style theory that good men need to know. Number 1, attachment style theory is rooted in the belief that as an adult's behavior in a relationship is molded by their upbringing. You can hear it in the definition of what attachment style theory is, that it explains how early bonds with caregivers shape later relationship patterns. The idea that how we behave as adults, particularly in relationships using this model, that the idea that how we behave as adults in relationships is because of our upbringing is a victim mentality. I talk about can't victim versus can't take responsibility. An attachment style theory is a victim theory. It is a way to point the problems and challenges and flaws and characteristics that we have as an adult in a relationship. It is a way to point the finger outside of us for why we are the way we are, that puts the power and control outside of us in our childhood and upbringing, that we have no power to change. So it keeps us really stuck in can't victim. It strips us of our own agency and motivations. It keeps us prisoners of our upbringing. This is central to my message on the Happy Wife School channel, that there is no path forward when we believe that our unhealthy patterns, our limitations, how we show up in a relationship is because of our past, our childhood, or our parents' relationship and what they modeled for us. And in this case, whether we were securely attached or not. So what was very helpful to me in beginning to break out of can't victim and move into can't take responsibility. Can't take responsibility is I am where I am because of me and my own choices and decisions, which actually empowers us to change. What was really central for me to understand, to move out of can't victim or catch myself when I'm there and move into can't take responsibility, is the question of at what age is a person capable of making their own choices and decisions? At what age are they capable of choosing how they show up in life, how they show up in different relationships? Most of us know that at 18, we are making our own choices and we're choosing how we show up and how we interact. So when I was 18, like many of us, I thought I knew everything. And I was making my own choices of what I wanted to do. I grew up with good, nice parents, and I made the choices to be rebellious and to not go into my adult life wanting to create something for myself, wanting to move in a healthy direction. I wanted to do what I wanted when I wanted to do it, and I wanted to rebel. I wanted to party. And I had no interest in taking the support and advice of my parents to create a stable path for myself. Whereas I have 2 siblings, I have a brother and a sister. Whereas I essentially dropped out of college my freshman year. My sister graduated with a 4-year degree from the University of Florida, went on to her adult life and got an adult job. And while she had her own challenges, was able to thrive and follow that path. My brother got married young, I think at 21 or 22, built a successful business, had kids. And we had the same parents. We grew up in the same environment. So we have to understand that we go into our adult lives, making our own choices based on our own beliefs, based on our own perspectives of life, regardless of our upbringing in the environment that we were raised in. And we can know that when we have different siblings, the same parents, and we all go off into adult life to make our own choices and decisions. It's really just a matter, do we want to live in camp victim, rationalizing our flaws and shortcomings and unhealthy patterns in relationships? Or do we want to live in camp take responsibility, where we are in the driver's seat, I'm in control, and that the problems and patterns that I have are because of me, solely because of me? That it's very empowering, and it's actually the only way we can make permanent healthy change without lugging a big victim story behind us about our childhood. The second critical flaw of attachment style theory that good men need to know is that all good men generally go into marriage secure. All good men generally go into marriage secure. There's 4 main attachment styles, and one of them is a secure attachment style. And if you're in one of the other 3 attachment styles, which are anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, avoidant, and fearful, avoidant, or disorganized, the goal and the model is to move toward a secure attachment style. And a secure attachment style is described as individuals who tend to have healthy, balanced relationships. They are comfortable with both closeness and being alone, and can express their needs and feelings openly. They feel comfortable with intimacy and are not overly concerned about rejection. That describes a good man. That's a good man's nature. That's who they are. And generally, most good men go into a marriage with a secure attachment style because it's who they are as good men. It is the emasculation, the gaslighting, the provocation by his wife that creates the unhealthy behaviors and patterns associated with the other styles. So let's take a look at a few of those. So one of the attachment styles is anxious, preoccupied, and this style is characterized by a fear of abandonment, a strong need for reassurance. They may be emotional or sensitive to their partner's actions, and they often seek closeness and are prone to anxiety in relationships. Another style, dismissive avoidant, where people with this attachment style tend to be emotionally distant and value independence, often preferring to handle things on their own. They may avoid deep feelings and discussions and seem aloof. The fearful avoidant, they're often in instability and results in a confusing mix of behaviors. Individuals with this style both crave closeness and fear it at the same time, leading to unpredictable relationship dynamics. So if a good man goes into a marriage generally secure, it is the emasculation and the gaslighting that creates the different characteristics. If we look at the first one, anxious, preoccupied, as women, when we are the ice queen, we're pushing a good man away, we are constantly disapproving of them and trying to change them. This can lead to a strong sense of anxiety from a good man in a relationship. And that can cause him to be needy or needing more reassurance. And of course, he becomes very sensitive to his wife's actions. On the other hand, dismissive avoidant, being the ice queen, pushing our husbands away, having our walls up, making them wrong and bad, can create a good man to check out of the relationship and become very distant because we literally push them away. Or as women, when we provoke a good man and create a very unsafe emotional environment in the marriage, then this can create the fearful avoidant style, where a good man leads to unpredictable patterns or reactions in the relationship. The attachment style theory does not take into consideration how a good man's nature of being secure in himself is beaten out of him. And then he, as a good man, buys into and believes that he is the non-supportive characteristics based on his reactions in response to the emasculation and gaslighting. And as women, when this is how we're showing up in the relationship, which is how we show up in the relationship, unless we've been red-pilled and are learning to show up differently, the whole purpose of the emasculation is to make a good man forget who he is as a good man. So a good man buys into, I am really distant, or I did react really angrily, or I am really needy. And he sees he's doing those things and then buys into this, well, this is who I am, and can't see the real cause is how his wife has been treating him and emasculating him and taking away his sense of security in himself through those behaviors. The third critical flaw of attachment style theory that good men need to know is that, in general, all families are dysfunctional to a degree. Attachment style theory does not take into account the reality of family, let alone the reality of two parents, let's say in a normal dysfunctional family. Likely going to be a good man and a woman. As women, we create the unsafe environment. We're emasculating our husbands, and then that has an impact on the environment of the home. So I often say the women were the sun, and our husbands and our kids are the earth, and they revolve around our moods and how we're showing up in the family. We create the culture. I've had students come to me after taking my courses and say, oh my gosh, I realize now why my parents were the way they were. My dad's a good man and my mom's a woman. And they had these dynamics in their family, and they can understand the challenges that they had. But most of us grew up in some dysfunctional family to a degree. And most of us have a fantasy of what we thought the ideal family home and environment should be. Of that, if only my parents had been more loving with me and my siblings and with each other, if there was more warmth in the home, if they if we were close as a family and I had that nurturing environment, then I would have been able to go out into life and create something different and go into life confident and secure in myself. And we have that fantasy, very much like how as women we have the fantasy of what we think a marriage is going to be, and it's going to be happily ever after. Most of us as humans have that fantasy of what we thought the ideal family life could have been growing up and what our upbringing should have been. And even people who feel that they had a great upbringing and had loving parents, in my experience of working with both men and women over 10 years, even those people have a victim story. And that can sound like my parents were too attentive, so I never learned to really be independent, or never learned to fail. So now when I fail in life, it's really difficult. And they have a victim story about how their childhood was too good and what that's preventing them from in their adulthood. It's just our human nature to want to look at our childhood, to look at our upbringing, to explain the different challenges and problems we have in our adulthood. And then that's the therapy model. So it gets reinforced by society. It gets reinforced by therapy that, how we are as adults is because of our childhood. So this is flawed because the attachment style theory insinuates that there is some ideal family environment that would have allowed us to go into adulthood confident and secure, when the truth is we all grow up to be individuals making our own choices regardless of the environment that we are raised in. You can look at some people who seem to be raised in good homes with good loving parents. Doesn't mean it was perfect. And they go into life and make really bad choices and create a really hard life. Or we also see people who grew up in unthinkable conditions and they decide, I'm going to create a different life for myself, and I'm not going to repeat this, and I'm going to take this really difficult experience that I had, or experiences that I had in my childhood, and I'm going to create a totally different life. It's our choices and our own individuality. The fourth critical flaw of attachment style theory. The goal of attachment style theory is to foster emotional awareness and create a safe environment where couples can develop new strategies for managing conflict and strengthening their bond. So this is where I have to say, come on, come on, let's get real. That there is no woman married to a good man who, unless she's red-pilled to see the truth of how she's showing up, there's no woman married to a good man who's capable of fostering emotional awareness, creating a safe environment, developing new strategies to manage conflict and strengthen their bond. As women, we have a different motivation in marriage. And the motivation is to break our husbands down so that we have the power and we are in control of the relationship. And the mechanism of which we do that by is emasculation and gaslighting. It shows how disconnected a therapist is from the realities of how a marriage really works. And believing that the wife is really there in couples counseling to solve the problems and to create emotional intimacy and to strengthen their bond. Where 9 times out of 10 as women, we're going to couples counseling to validate our victim stories and to prove how our husbands are the problem, and have a licensed professional, validate that our husbands are the problem. The fifth critical flaw with attachment style theory that good men need to know, number 5, is that attachment style therapy and couples counseling is gynocentric, meaning that it is biased toward the woman, because 95% of the time it's the wife that wants to go to couples counseling and says that she wants to create emotional awareness and create a safe environment and develop strategies for managing conflict and having healthy communication to strengthen her bond with her husband or strengthen the connection. That's what we say that we want. But the truth is, we go into couples counseling, we give our story of how we're feeling in the relationship, how our husband is the problem. We've likely already psychoanalyzed our husband and his childhood and share this with the therapist. And the therapist believes the woman and can't see the reality that a good man in general came into the relationship secure, regardless of his childhood, and that it's through the wife's emasculation and gaslighting of him that he can't see or understand and know and break out of, that the problems persist. So the therapist believes the woman, and the good man gets duped into believing he has all these problems, and that if he just changes and does the things that his wife is asking of him with the guidance of a couples counselor, that things will change. And he does all the things, and the goalpost keeps moving further and further and further and further. I've talked to a number of good men where their whole experience of couples counseling was going week after week to hear more of what he needed to change than him making those changes, only to go back to couples counseling the next week or a couple weeks out to be told more things he needs to go do, with nothing being asked of his wife, or if anything was, she doesn't follow through, and then comes up with some story of why she didn't because of what the husband did or didn't do. And it's this never ending chasing a carrot that he can never catch. And it's never enough, and it never works. On the other side of the coin, and using attachment style therapy, as women, we get coddled in our victim story of what happened to us when we were young and what our childhood life was like and what our parents were like. So we get coddled in our own victim story. And then we use our own unhealthy attachment style in this model to excuse, justify, and rationalize our poor behavior. And a good man gets double duped. So one, he gets duped into believing that he's the negative characteristics of the unhealthy attachment styles and he's the problem in the relationship. And if he only changes those things, his wife will re-engage and the problems will get solved. And then he gets duped into believing his wife's attachment style, unhealthy attachment style, that's why she is the way she is and that she needs to be coddled in her shortcomings and challenges based on her childhood. The sixth flaw of attachment style therapy is that attachment style theory is based on codependency. So essentially, in the beginning of learning the different attachment styles and learning what attachment style you are, which is often on one of the unhealthy ones, and with the goal of moving to a secure attachment style, that you learn each other's attachment style, and then you need to change the way you communicate, change the way you're showing up to make your spouse feel safe and secure in the relationship. And then your spouse needs to communicate with you a certain way based on how you were brought up and based on your childhood, and that's somehow supposed to allow each of you to feel secure and safe in the environment of the relationship. And that's a codependency. I need you to treat me a certain way, communicate with me in a certain way, show up with me in a certain way for me to feel safe in the relationship. And then in turn, I need to show up a certain way and communicate in a certain way for you to feel safe. And that creates a codependency where we become enmeshed and dependent in our own sense of security in ourselves on the other person, which puts the power outside of us. I assure you, for the women listening, when you're happy in yourself, secure in yourself because of you and the work you do on yourself to get out of camp victim and to feel good about who you are and how you are showing up in your life, your husband, whose nature as a good man is to love you, care for you, wants to have fun, wants intimacy, wants communication, wants the problem solved. If you're in that dance with each other, you don't need the other person to change or show up a certain way to feel safe and secure in the relationship. You don't need them to understand your childhood. You don't need them to understand your background. You don't need them to understand what it was like growing up. You don't need them to understand your parents because you're just being grown-up adults in yourself, and a good man and his nature is right there waiting for you. When as women, we become happy in ourselves and take responsibility and show up to do our best in the relationship. We're always going to have our differences because we're wired differently. It's not supposed to look perfect, but we accept each other in our differences and then can dance together in that without the need of anyone needing to change who they are or how they show up because you're just two healthy adults. And two healthy adults can come together to communicate and work through problems as adults without bringing in their childhood or how they were raised or their parents. It makes things so much easier. So that's the sixth flaw of attachment style theory, is that it fosters codependency and is based on codependency. And number 7, the seventh critical flaw of attachment style theory that good men need to know. Number 7, it is a ruse. It is a ruse that a wife really wants to get better and improve the marriage. Women are not willing to, 1, take accountability for our problems. And number 2, actually follow through to change. As many of the men who watch my channel know, it is very rare that a married woman is willing to change. Because as women, we are so deeply entrenched in camp victim, we are incapable of seeing our part and role, and we are addicted to making our husbands the problem and putting everything on their shoulders. We only want to use couples therapy and attachment styles to create our husbands to be the problem and to validate our own victim story, to have an excuse and rationalization of our own poor behavior. Worse is then we use the attachment style theory or other models in couples therapy to make our husbands wrong and bad. We will analyze and critique how our husbands are using the model. It's like, you're not doing it right. That's not how you're supposed to talk to me. You have to remember that this is my attachment style and this is how I need you to talk to me based on my own childhood and my own upbringing. You're not doing it right, but I am. I am doing it right. If you just paid attention to how I'm doing it, then you could maybe learn, and then we could do this right together. So it's just another weapon that we use against our husbands to make them wrong and bad. And then we'll put ourselves on a pedestal of, look at me, I'm moving into a secure attachment style. I don't know what you're doing, but you're still stuck and you're not changing. But here's how I know I'm becoming secure, and here's what you need to do that as well. So we hijack the model and become experts in it. And then again, further use that to make our husbands wrong and bad. So those are the 7 critical flaws of attachment style theory that good men need to know, and women need to know as well. I thought this was the way, and fell into all the 7 flaws that I just shared, trying to use this in my own marriage. So I want to now go into the solution, and I'll first talk about the solution for women. You don't need attachment style theory. You don't need couples counseling to solve the issues in your marriage. You need to understand your own unhappiness within yourself that you have created by not valuing who you are, by the choices and decisions you make in your life that make you feel bad about who you are, how you show up behind closed doors that no one else can see other than your husband, that makes you feel really bad about who you are. And understanding living in camp victim, putting the power and control outside of you and blaming your husband or others in your life or your childhood for your problems, puts the control and power outside of you and leaves you feeling powerless to change, stuck, watching yourself do the same behaviors over and over and over again, and then feeling like there's something wrong with you that you can't change. You can't change because you're blaming and putting the power and control outside of you. And when we do that, it renders us completely powerless to be able to change. When you work on yourself to value who you are, to change how you're showing up and how you're treating your husband so that you're being a woman of character and integrity, when you let go of the victim stories of your childhood and your past, and you take responsibility for yourself as an adult, that you are where you are because of your choices and decisions, and you are married to a good man whose nature is to be fair, reasonable, responsible, grounded, pragmatic, a problem solver, wants more than anything for you just to be happy, he will be waiting there for you, naturally secure and confident in himself if you allow him to be who he is in his nature as a good man. And 90% of the problems will simply go away. And the 10% that's left are just the challenges of life that you have to go through and work through together, which is part of being in a marriage. We have to accept as women that we are the problem with a good man. I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's a good one because it, one, empowers you to be able to change and then completely shifts the lens of which you see your marriage and your husband and gives you a path forward to be able to change. And that's what I teach women in my happiness course, is how to move from camp victim to camp take responsibility, how to build value in yourself so you feel good about yourself and have a healthy relationship with yourself without ever having to work on the issues and problems in the marriage, because all your husband wants is for you to be happy. And when you're happy and self-aware through what you create, the only way to create and foster emotional awareness is to move out of camp victim. And when you do, and you create the self-awareness to see how you're showing up, you can stop yourself and catch yourself and choose how you're behaving and being in the marriage for yourself, and then your husband gets the benefit. It's very simple. And to good men, do not get confused by couples counseling and these different models that paint you to be someone other than who you are. You have to understand the real root of the issue, which is not your attachment style. You have to remember who you are as a good man and to open your eyes to the ways you have unknowingly given your power away to your wife, that she knows best, she knows what's right, she knows what a healthy marriage is supposed to look like, and giving your power away to her to go to couples counseling, where then you are further made to be the problem. You have to understand the realities of the emasculation and gaslighting that are happening so that you can see through it, no longer give your power away to it, and in that process, you regain your confidence and strength as a good man, regardless of if your wife changes or not. I teach what I teach with women, and in this part to good men, so you can see the reality of what's happening and work within the reality to regain your sense of self, to regain your confidence and regain your strength. It's not to be a victim to your wife. You have to see the reality of who she's created to be, that you gave your power away into that, not knowing any better, so that you can take that back and have a path forward to change, regardless of if your wife is going to change or not. So it isn't to make you a victim. It's to understand you married a woman, and all women on a spectrum have the issues and behaviors that I talk about on the channel. And when you understand those realities, you can learn to constructively navigate the relationship, remember who you are as a good man, and know that you're natural at having healthy relationships and that you are secure in yourself. One way good men can know that is by looking at who you are outside of the marriage. If you're successful in your career, when you interact with others, when you interact at your work, you're competent, you're confident in your skills and who you are and how you show up. You're able to communicate, you're able to have tough conversations. It's when you come home and you're in your marriage that competency and confidence in yourself disappears, because you're in the grips of your wife and her emasculation and gaslighting. When you begin to see that, you can begin to separate yourself from that, see the reality, and that's how you heal. And don't be confused that your wife is going to go into couples counseling and want to look at her problems and want to change, want to be better, and take accountability. Again, it's a ruse. So seeing the reality, you can make choices for yourself without getting duped and pulled into that, falsely believing it's somehow going to change things and make things better. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you haven't, go check me out on YouTube, Rumble, and X. You can find the links in the description below to connect with me there. For those women listening who know you are the problem and want a path forward to take responsibility and change your own inner turmoil and unhappiness, I have a course for women called the Happiness Program, which is the solution to the unhealthy relationship you have with yourself and the issues and challenges you have in your life and your marriage. You can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. And for the good men listening who want a solution to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to your wife, I have a course for you too called the Marriage Rescue Course for Good Men Only that teaches you how to rebuild your strength and confidence as a good man so that you can navigate the relationship with your wife in a healthy, constructive way. Again, you can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. Thank you again so much for listening, and I look forward to talking with you soon.